views, ideas, and content of WellSeekers and their guests are their own opinions, and you should always seek additional professional help around any of the issues discussed here on WellSeekers.
Hello and welcome back to Season 4 of WellSeekers. We are helping you rise and come back to the mind and life that you love, helping you change your life story and from a holistic approach. I'm Lucia, and I am so honored to be here with you this season and this week, talking more about anxiety in 2020 and the impact it's had and how we can help reduce it during COVID-19 and just in general, but especially during this time in our society. So if you were with us last week, we talked a little bit more about scientifically what anxiety was, how it actually is something that's happening in a part of your body, which is your brain. We know the pathways it takes. We know how it generally comes out, right? But what's different person to person is how we deal with it. And some people deal with it by trying to calm it down, right? Because you're trying to help yourself by calming it down with things like overeating, undereating, alcohol, shopping, right? Just things that you're trying to do to help with your limbic system. Some people freeze, they get anxious and they lay down and they don't get up, right? For the majority of the day. There's lots of different ways people respond to anxiety. And in 2020, especially, there's been an increase in anxiety, an astronomical increase. The Mental Health Association of America said that they've seen a 400% increase in people taking their assessment tools for anxiety and depression, which we talked about in detail last week. So these are huge, huge numbers. So don't think this is something that you're going through alone if you're feeling more anxious, but also don't think it's something that's made up. This is real, right? And just to briefly recap before we get into this week's topic and having Sharon Lawrence come back on to talk to us. What is anxiety? It is your mind perceiving a threat, right? And that threat can come from a variety of things. And I think we all know right now we are all being threatened on so many levels. So don't feel as if you are alone in this, right? One of the things that I thought about since reading the research that the Mental Health America has done on and I just want to get everyone their site as well, MHA. It's mhanational.org. So Mental Health America is mhanational.org if you want to take that screening tool. But one thing I thought about is how are we doing compared to the rest of the world, right? Because this is a global pandemic. And there was, of course, a research firm that partnered with another company to look at exactly that. They chose 9 countries. So Australia, Canada, France, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, the UK, and the United States. And what they did was they started to look at the mental health impacts to date that countries were reporting due to COVID-19, right? We all know that the negative impacts of COVID-19 are astronomical, especially from a mental health perspective. And this is something that we're seeing now and we're probably going to see long-term as well, right? So what they found, though, is they surveyed about 9,000 individuals and asked them to talk about negative economic consequences, negative mental health consequences. So the US and UK have been less likely, here's something interesting, to get the needed mental health care that they absolutely felt like through this research that they needed, right? So the UK and the US were the least likely to get help, but Americans were more likely than any other country to report that they had mental health concerns. So of those surveyed, 33% of Americans said that they were feeling stress, anxiety, or great sadness that felt difficult to cope with life since the start of COVID-19. Next in line, Canada and UK tied at about 26%. The least was Norway at 10%. So even though we have the highest amount of people feeling and reporting like they need mental health services, we have the least amount of people getting mental health services. So Australia was the highest at 54%. We were the lowest of those people that reported, only 31% of them got help. So if you're looking at that, right? So 33%, 1 in 3 people because of COVID need mental health services. And of those, 1 in 3 people, a third of that, one person, so is getting help. So if you look at it in terms of 10 people, right? Out of 10 people, 3.3 of them, even though you can't do a third of a person, so let's just say 3 of them need help. 1 of them will get it, right? So we're struggling. Americans were also the most likely to report that they had negative economic consequences during COVID-19 at 31%. The least there was Germany at 6%, and then the Netherlands at 7%. Americans, Australians, and Canadians were most likely about tied, but the US led the way to report losing a job during COVID-19, right? These are all major life stressors that lead to anxiety. There was a correlation, which is a no-brainer, that Americans who faced, well, not a no-brainer, but there is correlation, a no-brainer to those in the field, right? We know that economics directly affects mental health, right? Because if you don't have enough money for your basic life needs, that is going to cause stress, anxiety, depression, right? So compared to all these other countries, Americans who faced economic problems were the ones who often faced mental health problems as well, right? All of this happening because of COVID-19, because of all the other additional stress we're facing here in the US, right? So one of the things to consider is what else is happening in the US during these times that's not happening in other countries. And we all know that that's vast. There's a vast majority of things happening right now that's also affecting mental health. All this to say that we are a country that needs help with anxiety desperately, and we are a country that's not getting it. If you're listening in other countries, because I know other countries do listen, I hope that you learned something about your country and where it ranked in those 9. Those 9 were chosen by this organization because they all were around the same as far as economics, right? So they wanted to compare them. So we need some help. We started last week talking about anxiety, what it was specifically, and now this week we're going to dive into more how to help. And Sharon Lawrence, she is a licensed clinical social worker and a professor. She is going to join us again in just a moment to talk about that. If you have a topic, though, that you want to talk about, we want to hear from you. So make sure you reach out to us on all of our social media at WellSeekers. That's on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can find me at Lucia Nazzaro. But we really want to connect with you this season in particular. Every season we've wanted to connect with you, but we want you to help us find your topics and tell us what's important to you as we move through the rest of the season. So stay with us. We will be right back with our guest, Sharon Lawrence, in just a moment, right here on WellSeekers. After a long day, taking time to love yourself and your friends and your family more well can be a challenge. We're so burnt out and exhausted and stressed from working so hard during the day, we forget to love the people and the places and the things that are important to us. Well, Lucia at Night is here to help. We're going to be a retreat and a treat for your day. A place to laugh, to connect, and to learn to love yourself and others more well. We're going to talk about relationships, ways to sleep better. We'll have expert guests, personal stories, maybe even a musical guest or two. We'll share behind the scenes into my own life as well, my friends, my family, and of course, my relationships. So close the door on your day and light up your night with Lucia at Night. Also, make sure to check out more at wellseekers.com for simple and real-life ways to bring wellness home. I'll see you tonight on Lucia at Night.
You're listening to WellSeekers, a show where the journey is just as important as the destination.
And we are back on WellSeekers with Sharon J. Lawrence. She is the founder of Selah Wellness. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She is a professional coach. She is just all around amazing. And she is a therapist for therapists, which is so needed, especially right now. And she is back joining us again for a second part of our series on anxiety. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lucia, for having me. I'm excited to be back again.
I know. So this series, we kicked it off with you helping us talk about stress and anxiety, the differences, and focusing on anxiety now. And of course, the prevalence that's happening and the increase this year during 2020. If you've just listened to episode 1, awesome. Welcome back. If not, and you want to deep dive into the differences and you want to learn more about anxiety and details, absolutely click on episode 1 to take a listen to that. But just briefly, Sharon, can you give us the overview of what anxiety is for those that maybe just clicked on episode 2?
Absolutely. So anxiety is that constant, persistent worrying that ends up showing up, and it can show up connected to a stressor. It can show up without a stressor even being present. It causes you to have issues with sleeping, difficulty concentrating. You may be agitated. You may be having issues with appetite. It can show up in many different ways, but mostly it has the attachment of worry.
If someone is listening right now, can you just give some indicators if they're thinking like, wait, do I have anxiety? Are there any classic markers that you could help people? And of course, this is not diagnostic. Always visit your own mental health professional, but just if someone is curious.
Yes. Again, I would say if you're finding that you're worrying a lot about things that you normally would not worry about, especially if there are things that you're saying, okay, I can't shake this and I seem to be obsessed with it, or there's no valid reason for me thinking this way, but I can't let it go. Or someone may be telling you, hey, is everything okay? You seem to be really agitated, really irritated. You don't seem like yourself. Those are some indicators that it may be time. I'll say maybe time to connect with a professional just to make sure everything's okay. Or if you're finding that you're having a hard time just focusing on work or getting things done around the house, or if you're sleeping a lot, you don't have a lot of energy, motivation is really low, I would say maybe it's time to connect with somebody just to figure out, okay, what is happening and how do you actually get back on track? Somebody who can help you work on some techniques.
Absolutely. So we talked about that deep dive, and in this show, we want to talk about some coping methods for mind and body. And obviously this is not an exhaustive list, and we're going to have experts come on, holistic experts in their field respectively, to talk about different aspects that I'm sure Sharon's about to touch upon. But if someone comes and says, I have anxiety and here's how it's manifesting, or maybe they're at the level of stress and just listening and they don't want this to be a pervasive problem, can you give us some ideas? And coping skills are sort of my favorite thing, and coping methods. So this is going to be a good conversation. And self-care. Some coping methods for mind and body at that holistic level. And you know what? We talked about this last time, but I'm gonna stop saying mind and body, because I guess it is separate, but your mind is part of your body. I don't know how nobody's made that link before. So it's really brain, I guess.
Brain.
Yeah. For body, full body holistic care. Yes.
And so when you're talking about strategies that are simple and doable, before you can tell someone to breathe, that's hard. When they have 10,000 things on their plate. So for me, I'm often trying to figure out, okay, can we talk about what your day looks like? What is your typical routine? What is on your plate? Because I'm going to see if I can look at getting them to adopt some type of strategy that allows them to write a list, to take a time out, and then add those strategies to be present in their day from beginning to end. And so then some of those strategies can be such as taking a time out, making sure that they're meal prepping, because we know that when people are stressed or they're anxious, what's going to happen? They're not going to eat. They're going to say, oh, I didn't have an appetite. So you want to make sure that they're eating something, even if it's a piece of fruit. So making sure that there are things throughout your day that's going to help you reset and refocus and re-energize. And so I'm going to tell them, you may want to do meditation. You may want to take some deep breaths. You may want to count to 10. You may want to even count steps as you're walking to the bathroom. That is a way to kind of refocus. Those are one of the strategies that I give individuals in anger management, that sometimes when you're walking away, just start counting and it helps them to calm down. The other thing is, I would say, maybe look at your diet in general. Are there some things in your diet that maybe your body is responding to? And so maybe consider, changing your diet or eating according to your blood type. I know that that is a big thing now that people are doing, because they're realizing that what is healthy for one may not be healthy for their particular blood type. Speak to your doctor about your medications. Is it possible that you're responding to something different? So you may have to go and get something changed. But making sure that you're sleeping at night, that you're meditating, or if you don't like to meditate, do you like music? Because like I said, what works for one does not work for all. You may like other things. I know individuals who say, I like to run. People may say, I like to walk. Get fresh air. Get that vitamin D. So go outside and let the sun shine on you. Let it kiss you. And so there are things that you need to do. And especially with bedtime, turn off the TV.
Oh, absolutely.
Turn off those lights.
Yeah.
Get the sleep you need. Cover up the alarm clock. If you're like me, I still have one of those clocks that, shine really bright. Turn it, make it face the wall, or cover it. If you have a cable box that has one of those bright little power lights, cover that too. Do things that you know are going to help you sleep at your optimal level. If you're able to get blackout curtains, invest in those. They are the best thing since sliced bread. So these are things that can help your coping strategies be really, really effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we talked about this a little bit before you were on, Sharon, but just what it does neurologically when you participate in these self-care items is fascinating. And we think, okay, just eat a healthy diet. Yeah. What can an unhealthy diet do? Right. But it can do a lot. It changes the chemicals in your bodies, what's released, what's not released, right? And keeping that steady is so important. So healthy diet to the best of your ability. You also mentioned physical exercise, so important. Relaxation techniques that you talked about. Like I mentioned, we're going to have a couple of people come on and talk about traditional relaxation techniques and unique relaxation techniques, because there are some out there. One of our guests is going to come on and talk about floating. I don't know if you've heard of float tanks. What works for one person doesn't always work for the next person, right? So having a wide range of relaxation techniques is so, so important. One of the other things that I've heard too, and I don't know if you've heard this, but avoiding alcohol and reducing caffeine and smoking as well as self-care to help reduce anxiety.
Absolutely. And if I can just add, extend grace to yourself. You're already trying to get rid of the stress and anxiety and the pressure that was present. So if you find that all that you had in place for that day did not go as planned, extend grace to yourself. Do your best. Don't beat yourself up. Start again tomorrow. So remember, this is about trying out new things and putting new things into practice that's going to help you be better, but it's not meant to beat you up. And so make sure that you're not putting pressure on yourself. That's a coping strategy as well, being kind to yourself.
Yeah. And some of that too is, I think, related to something called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And I always say, if you have anxiety, look for a therapist who's certified and trained in CBT. I am. And there is a difference, right? Between just talking about things and then actual formal skills and coping training sometimes. And CBT is great.
Yep. You're changing the way you think. And if you can change the way that you think, you're ultimately changing your behavior.
Yeah. At what point, Sharon, do you, and this is different person to person, and I'm going to say it again, always contact your own mental health professional. When do you think someone should think about other things? Because sometimes medication is helpful for anxiety disorders. Is there ever a point where you're like, okay, this is something that maybe they need to talk to a prescriber or their primary care physician?
Yes, indeed. I can think of a number of clients where I said, okay, CBT, EMDR, we've processed this and that has been effective, but this seems to keep coming up and there may be something else there that I'm not seeing or cannot tap into. And I will encourage them to at least have a discussion. I won't say it sounds like you need to be on medication because I'm not a psychiatrist. But what I will say is, would you consider speaking to someone? I have a list of professionals that I trust, who I have referred to in the past. It would help if you at least sit down to know if it's something else we're missing, because having that fresh set of eyes and someone asking different questions at times because they may hear something that we didn't hear, I think that can be helpful. And so when you find that you're kind of at this point where nothing's shifting in a particular area, and particularly with anxiety, where it's just persistent, again, constant, and you cannot shake it, and it's starting to get worse or increase, I definitely recommend speaking with either a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner, someone who specializes in psychiatry. No offense against the primary care physicians, but unless they can say that was a concentration of their study, I often will tell individuals, try to refrain from speaking with your primary care physician about psychiatric medication, because they may not be aware of new things that may be on the market or new strategies. And so I try to connect them with somebody in that particular area.
I actually completely agree as well. I always refer to either a psychiatrist or an APRN that can prescribe and specializes in mental health, because it is unique, right? Any part of the body, it's a specialty. Primary care physicians are great, but they're just that they're sort of know a little about a lot.
Exactly.
This is one of those things that a specialist is so important.
Again, this is your brain, right?
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you're with somebody who knows how to support you, and that you don't want someone experimenting on your brain.
Absolutely.
I had someone whose primary care physician gave them a medication. They literally were catatonic. And this was a person who I would see laugh and joke, and I kept saying, something's not right. Something's not right. And so decisions had to be made in that moment to get this person the support that they needed. And so, but it was scary because you have people making decisions when it's not their specialty, or they may over prescribe, where 5 milligrams may be okay with a med, but they gave 25 or 30 right out the gate, and it's going, no. So remember, it's your brain, it's your body, it's your mind, it's everything that we're talking about. That's a priority. And so make sure you treat it with kid gloves. You're saying, hey, I need help, and I want to get the best help possible.
Absolutely. One of the other things that you talked about, CBT, obviously an important modality to look for if you're looking for a therapist and you have anxiety, because sometimes I think people are confused. There's so many therapists out there, and they don't know what to pick, right? So sometimes they'll just pick someone randomly, but looking for someone with specific training in something like CBT is so important. You mentioned EMDR. For those that don't know, can you tell them what that is and why you think that's important?
Absolutely. So EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing treatment, is typically used for individuals who have had a trauma, maybe have a diagnosis of PTSD, but it really is helpful and is considered to be the fast track when addressing trauma, that and brain spotting. I'm still learning about this brain spotting thing. And so with EMDR in particular, it is meant to mimic our REM sleep while you are awake. Normally, when something happens to you, what happens? We go to sleep, we sleep on it, we wake up the next day and we feel kind of refreshed. Your brain has kind of processed and you're okay. But when a trauma takes place in your life, what happens is it kind of sits in your brain in its raw form. And if you think about a record that is kind of just playing over and over and over again, but you cannot get it to stop, that's what trauma does. And what happens with EMDR, it allows you to pull that event or that feeling associated with that event to the front of your brain, the frontal lobe, and address it in therapy. And so it's not talk therapy. There are hand movements or finger movements or light bar movements. It depends on what techniques your clinician will use. I often will, move my fingers from side to side, or I have something called a TheraTapper. And the TheraTapper will vibrate from one device to the other. And it's supposed to mimic your eyes moving from side to side, like when you're in REM sleep. Hope that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think, like all things, some people love it. Some people don't get as much out of it, right? And each technique is unique, but just knowing that there's one out there like that, as you said, it's not just talk therapy, it's more action-based. Same with CBT. There's a lot of homework. You're not just sitting there talking, leaving, and then coming back a week later.
Right.
There's a lot of things to look at and that you can bring into each session. So if you want to explore those CBT and EMDR, two evidence-based modalities that are really important in the treatment of anxiety and anxiety-related challenges.
Right.
Sharon, before we let you go, anything else that you want to say about coping methods or just in general about the times and what you're seeing and experiencing and how you're handling it?
This has been a challenging, 6 months? And so I would say that I'm feeling just like most people are feeling, and to some extent, some days are greater than others, but I find solace in knowing that I have the luxury to call on my own therapist or my own psychiatrist, say, hey, I need to talk through this. And so I think that this is a time where more and more people are finding courage to seek out help. I think more and more people are talking about mental health and what's happening. I also think that this is a time that people are grieving. As I said, I think in the other segment is that people are grieving what once was. And that's where a lot of the stress is also coming from, where you would have that ride to work, whether in the car or in the metro, though that time has now been removed. Those hugs that you would get from granny or from your grandchildren or your siblings, that has now ceased. And what we knew as our normal, it doesn't exist at this point. And so I'm encouraging people to be open to rewriting what the new normal looks like, rewriting their narrative, and be willing to be reflective and use this time to really work on some things that they've been wanting to work on, whether individually, whether home-based in terms of projects, relationship stuff. This really is a time that you can use to your advantage. Once you've worked through what you are feeling and what you are experiencing, I encourage you to have, the strength and the courage to kind of say, okay, now it's time to do some other work. I've been wanting to do A, B, and C, and now I'm going to do it. So don't allow this moment of challenge to hold you hostage.
Very well said. And just so many shifts, like you mentioned, missing the 15 minutes in your car alone, or the 10 minutes on a bus or a train or wherever you get your time to re-energize, that's gone, right?
Yeah.
So being a little bit more compassionate towards yourself and to other people around you, that these are challenging times.
Absolutely.
Sharon J. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us. And if people want to get in contact with you, find out more, where can we find you?
I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube at My Selah Wellness. I can also be found on LinkedIn at Sharon J. Lawrence, and my website is myselahwellness.com. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on, and we will put all her links below so you can get in touch with her easily. Thanks, Sharon, so much for your time and your wisdom and for just being a part of our family here at WellSeekers.
Thank you, Lucia. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be a part of the team.
We'll be right back on WellSeekers.
Today's lifestyle demands the best in wireless, and with Pulse Cellular, you have the best options available. Switch to Pulse Cellular for unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data, coast to coast with no contracts, no credit checks, and no overage fees. One line for $65 or 4 lines for just $45 each, including hotspot, Wi-Fi calling, and 50 gigs per line. And for all you travelers, we got you covered in Canada and Mexico. Plus, text and data in over 210 countries worldwide, all with the best phones or bring your own. That's pretty awesome. Get the best user experience on mobile at pulsecellular.com.
Thanks for being part of the Seekerhood. We couldn't do this without you. Now, back to the show.
And we're back on WellSeekers. Thanks so much again to our guest, Sharon Lawrence, for coming on again and wrapping up this series on anxiety as far as the mental health aspect. We are going to continue the series with personal stories, with meditation, with workouts, and just keep going to help you in this area as best we can for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I know at the end of each show, I try and leave you with a tool. Last week, we talked about some tangible tools that I use. This week, I want to talk about a course that was actually created specifically, Coping Through Crisis, a self-paced 5-day guide to reduce stress, anxiety, and elevate your mood during these challenging times. This course was developed with another amazing expert. Her name's Dr. Danica Harris, and I was honored to do this course with her. You can find it at wellseekers.com. If you click on courses, it's the only course there. We made this for this time, for 2020, to help you through whatever challenge and crisis you're going through. And because you're a friend of the show, because you're listening, if you enter the coupon code JOY20, you'll get 80% off the course. So, which is a lot. So 80% off the course if you put in JOY20, because we all need some joy in 2020. Again, it's self-paced, has so many tools, so many resources to help you cope through these challenging times. I have downloaded the course and work myself through it sometimes, because I really do, I've said this before, but I use all of these tools in my own life. I practice what I preach, and I don't know what I would do without them, because this is and has been such a challenging year. And we know it and we feel it, and we know you are feeling it as well. So we hope that the information we can give, the experts that we have on, and the tools we can provide for you can help you live your best life story and rise and come back to where you want to be, because that is the goal of this show. So thanks so much for joining us here on WellSeekers. We will be back next week with our guest, Swami Varadin, talking about breathing meditation, how we can breathe through 2020 in a different way. So thank you for taking the time. We know you have a lot of different places where you can spend your time and spend your energy, and we truly, truly are honored that you choose to spend it with us. So thanks for being a part of our Seekerhood and our family, and we'll see you next week here on WellSeekers.
How would you like to join the conversation? Email us anytime at hello@wellseekers.com.